Imagine standing at the edge of a golden desert, where the sun blazes relentlessly overhead and the sands stretch endlessly into the horizon. In the distance, lush green ribbons of life hug the winding Nile, bursting with palm trees, crops, and bustling villages. Towering above it all are the pyramids, monumental structures so colossal they seem to pierce the heavens themselves. These weren't just tombs. These were declarations of power, ambition, and an unshakable belief in eternity. But what was it like to rule an empire where gods walked among men? What secrets lie buried beneath those colossal monuments that still baffle us today? The pharaohs of ancient Egypt were no ordinary rulers. They weren't just kings or queens. They were living deities, worshipped as intermediaries between humanity and the divine. To their people, they were untouchable, immortal beings destined to ascend to the stars after death. Yet behind this glittering facade of godhood lay something far more complex and far darker. Beneath the gold-encrusted masks and towering crowns, the pharaohs were human, burdened by fears, frailties, and obsessions we might find eerily familiar. Their lives were a paradox, opulent yet oppressive, divine yet deeply flawed. Every sunrise marked another day for these god-kings to maintain cosmic balance, or risk plunging their kingdom into chaos. Every decision, every ritual, every breath was steeped in symbolism and superstition. And yet, for all their power, their reigns were riddled with intrigue, betrayal, and shocking practices that defy modern understanding. Why did some pharaohs marry their siblings? What drove them to construct such monumental tombs, only to fill them with treasures beyond imagination, and sometimes even human sacrifices? How could someone so revered live a life so haunted? But perhaps the most fascinating question of all is this. What happens when you're told from birth that you're a god? That your very existence holds the key to the survival of an entire civilization? Imagine carrying that weight on your shoulders while navigating palace politics, rivalries, and the ever-looming specter of mortality. Because despite their claims to divinity, the pharaohs couldn't escape death any more than the common farmer tilling fields along the Nile. And oh, how obsessed they were with death. Their own, specifically. From the moment they ascended the throne, each pharaoh began planning not just for their legacy but for their eternal afterlife. Tombs were commissioned, treasures amassed, spells inscribed, all to ensure their safe passage to the field of reeds, where they would reign supreme alongside Osiris and Ra. Take, for example, the builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This wasn't just architecture, it was a statement, declaration of immortality carved in stone. But who was this man behind the monument? Was he driven by piety, paranoia, or sheer megalomania? Did he lose sleep wondering if his pyramid would protect him in the next world? Or if it would crumble under the weight of time, leaving his soul adrift in the void? And then there's Tutankhamun, the boy king, whose short life ended before he could leave much of a mark on history. Yet his tomb, discovered nearly intact thousands of years later, revealed a treasure trove of golden splendor. It captivated the world and sparked a global obsession with ancient Egypt. But why does his story resonate so deeply with us? Is it because of the dazzling artifacts, or is it something else? Perhaps it's the realization that even someone surrounded by unimaginable wealth and divine status couldn't escape the fragility of human existence. Imagine a world where the sun blazed relentlessly over golden deserts, stretching endlessly toward horizons that seemed to touch eternity. Alongside this arid expanse flowed the life-giving Nile, a shimmering ribbon of green cutting through the barren landscape, bringing fertility and prosperity to an otherwise unforgiving land. This was ancient Egypt, a civilization built on contrasts, thriving in balance between chaos and order, life and death, humanity and divinity. At the heart of this society lay its cosmology, a belief system so intricate it shaped every aspect of daily existence. Central to this worldview was Mayat, the concept of cosmic balance and harmony. Mayat wasn't just an abstract idea. It was the very fabric of reality holding back the forces of chaos, Isfet, that threatened to consume the universe. For the Egyptians, everything from the flooding of the Nile to the rising of the sun depended on maintaining this delicate equilibrium. And at the center of it all stood the pharaoh, the living embodiment of Mayat itself. The pharaoh wasn't merely a ruler or administrator. He, or occasionally she, was a divine figure tasked with upholding the cosmic order. Every decision they made, from agricultural policies to military campaigns, was steeped in ritual and symbolism, designed to ensure the continued favor of the gods. But here's the thing. Being the guardian of Maat wasn't just a privilege, it was a crushing responsibility. Imagine carrying the weight of an entire civilization on your shoulders, knowing that one misstep could unleash famine, war, or even the collapse of the cosmos itself. That was the burden of the pharaoh. Egyptian culture reflected this obsession with balance and permanence. From the towering pyramids to the meticulously planned cities, every structure, every artifact, every act was imbued with meaning. Even the geography reinforced their beliefs. The fertile river valley represented life and abundance, while the surrounding desert symbolized death and chaos. It was a constant reminder of the precariousness of existence and the critical role the pharaoh played in keeping it all together. But what happens when you're told from birth that you're not just a king but a god? How do you live up to such impossible expectations? These questions haunted the pharaohs, shaping their lives in ways both extraordinary and tragic. Let's step into the sandals of a pharaoh for a moment and walk through a typical day in their life. Spoiler alert, it wasn't exactly glamorous. Sure, there were golden crowns, incense-filled temples, and servants attending to their every need. But beneath the surface lay a grueling routine of rituals, ceremonies, and unrelenting pressure to maintain perfection. The day began before sunrise, as priests arrived to awaken the pharaoh with a ceremonial cleansing. This wasn't your average morning shower. It was a sacred purification meant to prepare him, or her, for their divine duties. After bathing in holy water, the pharaoh would be adorned with the finest linens and regalia, the iconic double crown representing the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, the crook symbolizing leadership, and the flail signifying authority. Each item carried layers of symbolism, transforming the pharaoh from a mere mortal into a walking embodiment of cosmic order. Once dressed, the pharaoh would make their way to the temple for the first round of offerings to the gods. This wasn't optional, it was mandatory. The pharaoh's primary role was to act as an intermediary between the divine realm and the earthly domain, ensuring the gods remained appeased. Inside the inner sanctum of the temple, only the pharaoh and high priests were allowed. Here, they would prostrate themselves before statues of deities like Ra, Osiris, and Horus, presenting lavish gifts of food, wine, incense. These rituals weren't symbolic. They were believed to have tangible effects on the prosperity of Egypt. If the pharaoh failed to perform them correctly, disaster could strike. After completing the morning worship, the pharaoh would move on to matters of state. Surrounded by advisors, including viziers who acted as the eyes and ears of the kingdom, they would review reports on everything from irrigation projects to diplomatic relations with neighboring empires. Decisions had to align with Maat, meaning no choice was ever purely practical. Every action carried spiritual significance, adding another layer of complexity to governance. Even meals were infused with ritual. Food wasn't just sustenance, it was an offering to the gods, carefully prepared and presented according to strict guidelines. Every bite reinforced the pharaoh's connection to the divine. Leisure time, too, was rarely free of obligation. Whether hosting banquets or overseeing construction projects, every activity served a purpose, reinforcing the pharaoh's image as a flawless, untouchable deity. By evening, the pharaoh would retire to their chambers, but even sleep wasn't a reprieve. Dreams were seen as messages from the gods, requiring interpretation by priests. Sleep itself was considered a form of mystical communion with the divine, where the pharaoh's soul merged with Ra to renew his life force. It was exhausting, day after day, year after year. The pharaoh lived under the relentless scrutiny of gods and men alike. Now, let's zoom out and talk about the ideology behind all this pageantry. Divine kingship. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh wasn't just a political leader, they were the literal bridge between heaven and earth. According to myth, each pharaoh was the son or daughter of Ra, born to rule as the living incarnation of Horus, the falcon-headed sky god. When one pharaoh died, they became Osiris, ruler of the underworld, while their successor took on the mantle of Horus. This cycle ensured continuity between generations, linking the pharaohs to an eternal chain of divinity. But divine status didn't mean unchecked power. Far from it. The pharaoh relied on an elaborate political machinery to govern effectively. Priests, for example, wielded enormous influence, interpreting omens, conducting rituals, and advising the throne. Viziers managed the day-to-day operations of the state, overseeing everything from tax collection to judicial disputes. Armies protected the borders, while scribes documented laws, decrees, and historical records. Without these institutions, the pharaoh's reign would crumble. And yet, despite their godlike aura, pharaohs were far from invincible. Their power rested on fragile foundations. A poor harvest, a military defeat, or even a natural disaster could be interpreted as signs of divine displeasure, undermining the pharaoh's legitimacy. Rebellion wasn't uncommon, especially during periods of instability. Remember, obedience to the pharaoh equaled piety, but disobedience equaled sacrilege. For most Egyptians, questioning the ruler was unthinkable. But history shows us that loyalty had limits. Take Akhenaten, for instance. His radical religious reforms, abolishing traditional polytheism in favor of worshipping Aten, the sun disk, sparked outrage among priests and nobles. By challenging centuries-old traditions, he disrupted the delicate balance of power, alienating key allies and destabilizing the empire. When he died, his successors scrambled to undo his changes, erasing his name from monuments and restoring the old ways. Akhenaten's story is a stark reminder of how precarious divine kingship truly was. Even Ramses II, often hailed as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, faced challenges. Despite his military victories and architectural achievements, his later years were marked by economic strain and internal dissent. Beneath the grandeur of his colossal statues and sprawling temples lay a kingdom grappling with the limitations of human ambition. In the end, the pharaohs were caught in a paradox. They were both omnipotent and vulnerable, revered and scrutinized, immortal and mortal. Their reigns remind us that power, even divine power, is never absolute. It's a fragile construct sustained by trust, tradition, and sheer willpower. And when those pillars wobbled, the consequences could be catastrophic. To understand the pharaohs' lives, you have to start with their families. But trust me, this isn't your average family tree. It's more like a tangled knot of incestuous relationships, so convoluted it makes modern soap operas look tame by comparison. Why did they do it? Simple. Blood purity. The Egyptians believed that the pharaohs were divine beings, direct descendants of the gods themselves. Marrying within the royal family wasn't just tradition, it was sacred duty. By keeping the bloodline pure, they thought they could preserve the divine essence passed down from Osiris and Isis. Take Akhenaten, for instance. This guy didn't just break religious norms. He upended centuries of polytheistic worship by declaring Aten, the sun disk, as the one true god. But even before his radical reforms, Akhenaten's personal life was already unconventional. He married his sister, or possibly half-sister, Nefertiti, in an effort to uphold the cosmic order. Their marriage wasn't just about love or convenience. It was seen as emulating the divine union of Osiris and Isis, whose brother-sister relationship was mythic precedent for royal unions. And yes, while their reign produced some of Egypt's most iconic art, like those breathtaking depictions of Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their daughters, you can't help but wonder how psychologically taxing these arrangements must have been. But here's where things get darker. The genetic consequences. Incest might sound like a way to preserve divinity, but biology had other plans. Let's talk about Tutankhamun, the boy king whose short reign ended at just 19 years old. His mummy tells a tragic story. Modern CT scans reveal congenital deformities, including a cleft palate, a club foot, and a host of chronic illnesses. These weren't random health issues. They were the result of generations of inbreeding. Tut's parents? Likely siblings themselves. Possibly Akhenaten and one of his close relatives. Imagine being born into a world where your very existence is celebrated as divine, only to spend your life battling debilitating conditions caused by the very practices meant to elevate you. And then there's Cleopatra VII, arguably the most famous pharaoh of them all. Her family took royal inbreeding to absurd extremes. For 3 generations, her ancestors practiced uninterrupted brother-sister marriages, creating a snarled web of genetic overlap. Cleopatra herself was likely the product of multiple incestuous pairings, making her both a literal and symbolic embodiment of Ptolemaic rule. Sure, she became a legend, not just for her beauty, but for her cunning diplomacy. But her rise to power came after surviving a gauntlet of betrayal, murder, and sibling rivalry. Speaking of which, the royal court wasn't just a place for lavish banquets and ceremonial pomp. It was a battlefield. Behind the gilded walls of the palace, scheming concubines, ambitious viziers, and foreign princesses vied for influence, power, and survival. Forget Game of Thrones. Ancient Egypt had its own version of cutthroat politics, complete with backstabbing, poisonings, and assassinations. Let's rewind to Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female pharaohs. She didn't seize power through brute force or divine mandate. She played the long game. After her husband Thutmose II died, Hatshepsut initially ruled as regent for her young stepson, Thutmose III. But over time, she began consolidating authority, eventually assuming full pharaonic titles and even wearing the false beard and crook and flail regalia reserved for kings. To legitimize her rule, she commissioned statues portraying herself as a masculine figure, blending femininity with divine kingship. Hatshepsut's reign was marked by prosperity and architectural marvels, but her success came at a cost. Upon her death, Thutmose III erased her name from monuments, perhaps out of resentment or political necessity. Whatever the reason, Hatshepsut's legacy reminds us that power in ancient Egypt was never guaranteed, even for someone who dared to defy convention. Fast forward to Ramses III, the last great pharaoh of the New Kingdom. His reign ended not with glory, but with scandal. Court records detail a chilling conspiracy involving one of his wives, Tiye, and several high-ranking officials. Their goal? To install Tiye's son, Pentower, as pharaoh by murdering Ramses III. Archaeologists discovered evidence of foul play during Ramses's mummification process. His throat had been slit post-mortem, likely as part of the coup attempt. Even more disturbing? When excavators uncovered the mummy believed to belong to Pentower, they found signs of strangulation. A grim reminder that failure in palace intrigue often came with fatal consequences. Foreign alliances added another layer of complexity to royal politics. Sending or receiving princesses as diplomatic gifts was common practice, designed to cement treaties and secure loyalty. But these marriages rarely brought peace. They often sparked new rivalries. Consider Cleopatra VII again. Her liaisons with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony weren't just romantic affairs. They were calculated moves to protect Egypt from Roman domination. Yet despite her brilliance, Cleopatra couldn't escape the inevitable collapse of her dynasty. When Octavian defeated Antony and Cleopatra at Actium, her suicide marked the end of pharaonic rule in Egypt and the beginning of Roman control. Even within the royal harem, competition raged. Lesser wives and concubines jockeyed for favor, knowing that bearing the pharaoh's heir could secure their position or destroy it. Rivalries between queens and secondary consorts sometimes escalated into open conflict. One infamous example involves Ramses II's wives, Nefertari and Isetnofret. Nefertari, known as the one for whom the sun shines, bore Ramses several sons, but none survived to inherit the throne. Isetnofret seized the opportunity to promote her own son, Merneptah, as crown prince, undermining Nefertari's influence in the process. These battles weren't just petty squabbles, they shaped the future of an empire. Now, let's dive into what truly consumed the pharaohs, their obsession with immortality. From the moment they ascended the throne, each pharaoh began planning for their eternal afterlife. This wasn't vanity, it was necessity. Without proper preparation, they risked wandering aimlessly in the underworld, cut off from the gods and denied access to the field of reeds, the paradise reserved for the righteous dead. No one embodied this fixation better than Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid of Giza, standing nearly 500 feet tall. The pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a monument to eternity. Its construction required decades of labor, countless resources, and thousands of workers. Inside, Khufu's burial chamber was stocked with treasures meant to sustain him in the next world. Yet for all its grandeur, the pyramid failed to protect its occupant. Like many royal tombs, it was looted within centuries of being sealed, leaving Khufu's remains scattered and forgotten. But the quest for immortality didn't stop at pyramids. Some pharaohs resorted to far more disturbing measures. Enter retainer sacrifices, the chilling practice of burying servants alongside their masters to continue serving them in the afterlife. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of such sacrifices in early dynastic tombs, particularly at Abydos. In one case, researchers found the remains of 318 individuals, men, women, and children, who had been methodically slaughtered and interred near the tomb of First Dynasty Pharaoh Jir. These victims weren't random citizens. They were members of the royal household, chosen to accompany the pharaoh into eternity. Can you imagine the psychological toll this must have taken on the living, knowing that your fate was tied to the pharaoh's death? By the new kingdom, human sacrifice had fallen out of favor, replaced by symbolic offerings and shabti figurines, small statuettes meant to perform labor on behalf of the deceased. But that didn't stop some rulers from indulging in bizarre rituals. Amenhotep II, for example, was buried with millions of human hair wigs, possibly intended to serve as replacements for his own locks in the afterlife. Ramses II went even further, interring his beloved horses with him to ensure transportation in the next realm. Clearly, the pharaohs left nothing to chance when it came to securing their place among the gods. Yet for all their elaborate preparations, the pharaohs couldn't outrun mortality. Many tombs were robbed within years of being sealed, their treasures plundered and bodies desecrated. Tutankhamun's tomb escaped this fate only because it was hidden beneath debris from later constructions. Even his golden mask, now an icon of ancient Egypt, almost met a grim end. Recent analysis suggests it was hastily repurposed from a funerary object originally made for someone else. The irony is staggering. Despite their best efforts, the pharaohs' attempts at immortality often led to ruin rather than salvation. In the end, their obsession with the afterlife reveals something profound about human nature. We fear oblivion, and we'll go to extraordinary lengths to avoid it, even if those efforts ultimately fail. The pharaohs may have sought eternal life, but what they achieved instead was a legacy written in stone, preserved for millennia in the ruins of their once glorious civilization. Let's talk about ego. Not your average everyday ego, but the kind that commands armies of workers to carve mountains into temples, erect statues taller than skyscrapers, and build pyramids so massive they can still be seen from space. Welcome to the world of megalomaniac building projects, where pharaohs weren't just rulers, they were architects of eternity. These weren't just constructions, they were declarations. I am here. I am powerful. Remember me. Take Ramses II, for example, the poster child for divine narcissism, known as Ramses the Great. He ruled Egypt for an astonishing 66 years during the New Kingdom, leaving behind a legacy etched in stone, literally. His reign was marked by relentless campaigns of self-promotion, with every temple, obelisk, and statue shouting his name across centuries. Abu Simbel? That wasn't just a temple, it was a billboard, carved directly into the side of a mountain. It features 4 colossal statues of Ramses himself, each towering over 65 feet tall. Imagine walking up to that. What message do you think Ramses wanted to send? Oh, nothing too subtle, just, bow before me, I'm basically a god. But Ramses didn't stop there. He had a habit of rewriting history, or at least erasing parts of it. If you wandered through ancient Egypt during his time, you'd notice something strange. Many monuments originally dedicated to earlier pharaohs now bore Ramses' name instead. It wasn't enough to build new structures. Ramses needed to dominate the past as well. Entire walls of temples were recarved to replace predecessors' names with his own. This wasn't just arrogance, it was propaganda on a cosmic scale. By claiming their achievements, Ramses sought to position himself as the ultimate ruler, a king among kings. And then there's the Ramesseum, his sprawling mortuary temple. Think of it as a retirement home for his soul, a place where priests would keep his memory alive forever. Or at least that was the plan. What makes the Ramesseum truly jaw-dropping isn't just its size, but the sheer audacity of its centerpiece, a granite statue of Ramses weighing over 1,000 tons. Yes, tons. Transporting such a monstrosity required thousands of workers, countless resources, and unimaginable effort. For context, this single statue weighed more than the entire weight of the Statue of Liberty. And why? Because Ramses wanted to ensure no one forgot him, not in this life or the next. Now, let's zoom out for a moment and consider the human cost of these monumental ambitions. Behind every gleaming limestone block and towering colossus lay a workforce laboring under grueling conditions. Contrary to popular belief, these builders weren't slaves, at least not in the traditional sense. They were skilled artisans, masons, and laborers, often recruited from peasant communities during the annual Nile flood when agricultural work was impossible. But don't mistake this for some kind-hearted employment program. These workers faced back-breaking labor, scorching heat, and dangerous working environments. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of injuries, malnutrition, and even early deaths among the workforce. One particularly haunting discovery comes from Deir el-Medina, the village where artisans lived while constructing tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Excavations revealed skeletal remains showing signs of chronic strain, likely caused by repetitive tasks like hauling heavy stones or chiseling intricate carvings. These men worked tirelessly, knowing their efforts would immortalize someone else, someone whose divine status placed them far above the struggles of ordinary mortals. The irony is almost poetic. While Ramses II spent decades glorifying himself, the very people who made his vision possible remained anonymous. Their names lost to history. Their blood, sweat, and tears built the monuments we marvel at today. But for them, it was simply survival. Perhaps that's why modern visitors feel a mix of awe and unease when standing beneath the shadow of Ramses' colossal statues. Beneath the grandeur lies a sobering reminder of human ambition and its toll. For all their power, wealth, and divine pretensions, the pharaohs couldn't escape the one thing that levels us all: death. No amount of gold, incense, or magical spells could shield them from mortality. In fact, the pharaohs' obsession with immortality only underscores how deeply they feared death itself. Consider Tutankhamun, the boy king whose tragic story encapsulates the fragility of life, even for those deemed divine. When Howard Carter cracked open Tut's tomb in 1922, the world gasped at the treasures within: golden shrines, jewel-encrusted chests, chariots, furniture, perfumes, food, wine, thing a young pharaoh might need for eternity. Yet despite his opulent burial, Tut's life was anything but glamorous. Modern CT scans and DNA analysis reveal a body racked by illness and deformities, likely caused by generations of inbreeding. Tut suffered from malaria, a club foot, and possibly Kohler disease, a rare condition affecting bone growth. Walking must have been excruciating, let alone ruling an empire. His short reign, just 9 years, ended abruptly when he died at the tender age of 19. Was it an accident? A fall from his chariot? Poison? Murder? Theories abound, but the truth remains elusive. What's clear is that Tut's brief life highlights the cruel irony of being a pharaoh, surrounded by symbols of eternity, yet unable to extend his own. Even Ramses the Saint, arguably the most celebrated pharaoh of them all, couldn't cheat death. Despite living to the ripe old age of 90, ancient by Egyptian standards, his final years were marred by declining health and dwindling resources. By the end of his reign, the empire he once presided over was showing cracks. Economic strain, internal dissent, and external threats loomed large. And though Ramses spared no expense in preparing for the afterlife, his mummy tells a different story. CT scans reveal arthritis, dental abscesses, and other ailments that plagued him in his later years. Even the mighty Ramses grew frail, his body betraying him despite his best efforts to defy mortality. This tension between power and vulnerability defines the pharaoh's relationship with death. On one hand, they commanded legions, amassed fortunes, and erected monuments designed to last millennia. On the other, they succumbed to the same frailties as anyone else: disease, injury, aging. Their elaborate preparations for the afterlife, mummification, treasure-filled tombs, magical spells, were attempts to wrest control from the chaos of death. But in the end, none of it mattered. Tombs were looted, bodies desecrated, memories faded. The pharaoh's quest for immortality often led to ruin rather than salvation. Perhaps that's why Tutankhamun fascinates us so much. His tomb survived intact not because of meticulous planning, but because of sheer luck. It was hidden beneath debris from later constructions. Without that twist of fate, his name might have joined the ranks of forgotten pharaohs, erased by time and tomb robbers alike. Instead, Tut became an icon, a symbol of ancient Egypt's splendor and mystery. But behind the golden mask lies a poignant reminder: even gods can die. Modern archaeology has peeled back the layers of myth and glamour surrounding the pharaohs, revealing truths that are as unsettling as they are fascinating. Thanks to advances in technology like CT scans, DNA analysis, and isotope studies, we're uncovering secrets buried for thousands of years. And let me tell you, what we've found isn't always pretty. Take Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who tried to revolutionize Egyptian religion by worshipping a single god, Aten. For decades, scholars puzzled over depictions of Akhenaten in art. He's shown with an elongated skull, spindly limbs, and feminine hips. Was this artistic license, or did he suffer from a genetic disorder? Recent DNA testing of royal mummies suggests the latter. Akhenaten's family tree is a tangled web of incestuous marriages, leading to severe genetic deformities. His son, Tutankhamun, inherited the same cursed bloodline, riddled with congenital conditions that shortened his life. Then there's the question of violence. While the pharaohs portrayed themselves as benevolent rulers chosen by the gods, evidence suggests otherwise. Take Seqenenre Tao, a pharaoh from the 17th dynasty whose mummy shows horrific injuries consistent with battle wounds. CT scans reveal multiple blows to the head, inflicted axes and daggers. Some historians believe Seqenenre died during a skirmish against the Hyksos, foreign invaders who occupied parts of Egypt. Others speculate he was assassinated, a victim of palace intrigue. Either way, his brutal death reminds us that even gods aren't safe from betrayal. Even Cleopatra VII, the last active pharaoh of Egypt, left behind clues pointing to darker truths. Her reputation as a seductress overshadows the fact that she was also a ruthless politician. To secure her throne, Cleopatra eliminated rivals, including her own siblings. Ptolemy XIV, her younger brother and co-ruler, mysteriously vanished shortly after accompanying Cleopatra on a trip to Rome. Coincidence? Unlikely. Many suspect foul play, orchestrated by Cleopatra herself. Similarly, Arsinoe IV, Cleopatra's half-sister and rival claimant to the throne, was paraded through Rome in chains before being executed on Mark Antony's orders, allegedly at Cleopatra's insistence. But perhaps the darkest revelations come from the tombs themselves. Archaeological digs have uncovered evidence of human sacrifices, retainer burials intended to serve the pharaoh in the afterlife. At Abydos, researchers found the remains of over 300 individuals buried near the tomb of 1st Dynasty Pharaoh Djir. These victims weren't random citizens. They were court officials, servants, and soldiers, carefully arranged in neat rows like an honor guard for eternity. Many show signs of strangulation or blunt force trauma, suggesting they didn't go willingly. Such practices raise uncomfortable questions about the moral compromises made in pursuit of divinity. Did the pharaohs see their subjects as expendable tools, meant to serve even in death? Or were these sacrifices viewed as noble acts, ensuring the stability of the cosmos? We may never know for sure. What's certain is that the pharaohs' obsession with immortality came at a steep price, not just for themselves but for those around them. In the end, the pharaohs remind us of humanity's dual nature, capable of breathtaking creativity and innovation, yet also prone to cruelty and excess. Their lives were a paradox, straddling the line between gods and mortals, power and frailty, eternity and oblivion. And perhaps that's why we remain captivated by their stories. Beneath the crowns and finery, the incense smoke and chanting priests, the pharaohs were still human, flawed, vulnerable, and searching for meaning in the face of the void. When we think about the pharaohs, it's easy to get lost in the grandeur of their pyramids, temples, and golden treasures. These monuments stand as testaments to their power, ambition, and vision. But they also carry deeper lessons about what it means to be human. The pharaohs weren't just rulers, they were architects of eternity, striving to leave behind something that would outlast them. And yet, for all their efforts to secure immortality, their true legacy lies not in stone or gold, but in the stories they tell us about ourselves. At the heart of the pharaoh's story is a universal struggle, the pursuit of meaning in the face of mortality. Every pyramid, every tomb, every ritual was an attempt to answer the same questions we still grapple with today. What happens when we die? Will we be remembered? Can we transcend our fleeting existence and leave a mark on the world? For the pharaohs, the stakes were cosmic. They believed their actions determined the balance between order and chaos, life and death. But strip away the divine pretensions, and you find a deeply human desire, the need to matter. Their lives remind us how fragile power can be. No matter how mighty, no matter how divine, every pharaoh eventually faced the same fate as the humblest peasant. Death doesn't discriminate. It comes for kings and commoners alike. Yet even in this inevitability, there's a kind of beauty. The pharaoh's obsession with eternity taught them, and now us, that life isn't measured by its length but by its impact. They may have failed to achieve literal immortality, but their legacies endure because they dared to dream big, to build boldly, and to believe in something greater than themselves. But let's not romanticize their quest too much. The pharaohs' pursuit of immortality often came at a cost, not just to themselves but to those around them. Thousands of workers labored under grueling conditions to construct the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Families were torn apart by political intrigue and betrayal. Servants were sacrificed to serve their masters in the afterlife. These dark realities remind us that ambition unchecked by empathy can lead to cruelty. Power, whether wielded by gods or mortals, carries a moral weight. How we use it defines our legacy, not just for ourselves but for future generations. In many ways, the pharaohs' struggles mirror our own. We live in a world obsessed with legacy, constantly building our own metaphorical pyramids, careers, achievements, social media profiles, all in the hope of being remembered. Like the pharaohs, we fear oblivion. We want to believe that our lives have meaning, that we'll leave the world better than we found it. But the pharaohs also teach us caution. Their elaborate preparations for the afterlife couldn't shield them from the ravages of time. Tombs were looted, bodies desecrated, names erased. In the end, what survived wasn't their wealth or divine status. It was the humanity embedded in their creations. The art, architecture, and mythology they left behind speak to something timeless, the enduring power of creativity, curiosity, and connection. So perhaps the real lesson of the pharaohs isn't about how to achieve immortality, it's about how to live fully while we're here. It's about balancing ambition with compassion, legacy with humility, power with responsibility. Their mistakes warn us of the dangers of hubris, while their triumphs inspire us to reach for greatness. In the end, the pharaohs didn't conquer death, but they did something equally profound. They reminded us that even the mightiest among us are still human, still searching for purpose in an uncertain world. Why does ancient Egypt continue to captivate us thousands of years later? Why do we flock to museums to gaze at golden masks, marvel at colossal statues, and pore over hieroglyphic inscriptions? The answer lies not just in the splendor of their civilization, but in the mysteries they left behind. The pharaohs didn't just build monuments, they built enigmas. Each tomb, each temple, each artifact invites us to step into a world both dazzlingly alien and strangely familiar. Part of the allure comes from the sheer scale of their achievements. The Great Pyramid of Giza remains one of the most mind-boggling feats of engineering in human history. Standing nearly 500 feet tall and composed of over 2 million limestone blocks, it defies logic even today. How did the ancient Egyptians move those massive stones without modern machinery? How did they align the pyramid so precisely with the stars? These questions fuel our imagination, sparking endless debates and theories. But beyond the technical marvels lies something even more compelling: the symbolism. Pyramids weren't just tombs, they were bridges between earth and sky, declarations of divinity, promises of eternity. They remind us of humanity's capacity to dream beyond its limits. Then there's the art. From the serene beauty of Nefertiti's bust to the towering majesty of the Colossi of Memnon, ancient Egyptian art speaks directly to the soul. Its elegance, symmetry, and attention to detail reflect a culture obsessed with perfection, both in life and in death. Even the smallest amulet or piece of jewelry carries layers of meaning, connecting the wearer to gods, ancestors, and cosmic forces. This artistry transcends time, speaking to us across millennia in a language we instinctively understand. But perhaps the greatest source of fascination is the mystery. Despite centuries of study, ancient Egypt still holds secrets. Every new discovery, from CT scans revealing hidden ailments in mummies to DNA, tests uncovering tangled family trees, brings fresh insights into their lives and deaths. Archaeologists are continually unearthing treasures that rewrite history. Take, for example, the recent discovery of the lost Golden City near Luxor, buried beneath the sands for over 3,000 years. Uncovered in 2021, this sprawling urban complex offers a glimpse into daily life during the reign of Amenhotep III. Streets lined with workshops, kitchens, and administrative buildings reveal a bustling society far removed from the opulence of royal tombs. It's discoveries like these that keep ancient Egypt alive in our collective consciousness. And let's not forget the mythology. The pantheon of gods and goddesses, from Ra, the sun god, to Osiris, ruler of the underworld, offers a rich tapestry of stories that explore themes of creation, destruction, love, and redemption. These myths aren't just relics of the past, they resonate with modern audiences because they tap into universal truths. Who hasn't felt the pull of Anubis, guiding souls through the darkness? Or the hope of rebirth promised by Isis, who pieced together her husband Osiris after his murder? These tales connect us to something primal, reminding us that the human experience is rooted in shared fears and aspirations. Even today, archaeology continues to shed light on the pharaoh's world. Advances in technology allow researchers to virtually unwrap mummies, analyze isotopes to trace trade networks, and reconstruct ancient climates using pollen samples. Each breakthrough deepens our understanding of these legendary rulers, bringing them closer to us not as distant, mythical figures but as flesh-and-blood humans navigating the complexities of power, faith, and mortality. The pharaoh's appeal lies in their duality. On one hand, they represent the pinnacle of human achievement, builders of pyramids, creators of art, seekers of immortality. On the other, they embody the flaws and frailties that make us human. Their contradictions draw us in, challenging us to reconcile the sacred and the profane, the awe-inspiring and the unsettling. In doing so, they hold up a mirror to our own nature, forcing us to confront the eternal questions of life, death, and what lies beyond. For all their divine pretensions, the pharaohs were never truly untouchable. Beneath the crowns and finery, the incense smoke and chanting priests, they were still human, flawed, vulnerable, and searching for purpose. They laughed, cried, loved, feared, and hoped just like the rest of us. And perhaps that's why their stories resonate so deeply, even thousands of years later. They remind us that no amount of power or wealth can shield us from the fundamental truths of existence. Think about Tutankhamun, whose tragic life ended before he could leave much of a mark on history. His physical ailments, likely caused by generations of inbreeding, paint a picture of suffering masked by splendor. Imagine him lying awake at night, unable to walk without pain, wondering if his short reign would be remembered or forgotten. Or consider Ramses II, whose relentless self-promotion ensured his name would live on long after his death. Yet for all his grandeur, his mummy reveals a body racked by arthritis, dental abscesses, and other ailments. Even the mighty Ramses grew frail, his divinity unable to protect him from the ravages of time. These glimpses of vulnerability humanize the pharaohs, stripping away the myth to reveal the person beneath. They remind us that behind every mask of power lies a beating heart, burdened by the same hopes and fears that haunt us all. Did Hatshepsut feel guilt as she erased her stepson's name from monuments to secure her place on the throne? Did Cleopatra feel despair as she watched her kingdom crumble under Roman domination? We'll never know for sure, but we can imagine, because their struggles, though played out on a grander stage, echo our own. The pharaoh's humanity also shows in the small moments, the ones history rarely records. They mourned the loss of children, celebrated victories with feasts, and marveled at sunsets over the Nile. They weren't just symbols of divine authority. They were people trying to make sense of their world. And in that sense, they were no different from us. Their quest for immortality wasn't just about securing a place among the gods. It was about finding meaning in a chaotic universe. They wanted to be remembered not as untouchable deities, but as individuals who mattered, who made a difference. Ultimately, the pharaoh's greatest legacy isn't their monuments or treasures. It's the reminder that even the most exalted among us share the same hopes and fears. They dreamed of eternity, but what endures is their humanity. Their triumphs inspire us to reach for greatness. Their failures warn us of the dangers of hubris. Together, they form a portrait of the human condition, a condition defined not by perfection but by imperfection, not by certainty but by curiosity. So the next time you see an image of a pharaoh, whether it's the iconic death mask of Tutankhamun or a faded hieroglyph carved into an ancient temple wall, remember this: they were gods and men, builders and destroyers, visionaries and tyrants. But above all, they were human, and in that humanity lies their enduring power, their timeless relevance, their eternal legacy. As we close this chapter on the pharaohs, let's take a moment to reflect on what they've taught us. They've shown us the heights of ambition and the depths of cruelty. They've challenged us to confront our own mortality and to consider what kind of legacy we want to leave behind. And most importantly, they've reminded us that beneath the trappings of power, wealth, and divinity, we're all just people searching for meaning in the shifting sands of life. As we wrap up this journey through the lives of the pharaohs, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've uncovered. These weren't just rulers. They were larger-than-life figures who shaped one of history's most iconic civilizations. From their dazzling achievements, monumental pyramids that pierce the sky, sprawling temples carved out of solid rock, and artistry that still takes our breath away, to their disturbing practices like human sacrifices and incestuous marriages, the pharaohs left behind a legacy as complex as it is captivating. They remind us of humanity's capacity for brilliance and brutality, for creation and destruction, for ambition and hubris. Their stories transcend time, speaking to universal truths about power, mortality, and the eternal quest for meaning. But here's the thing. Ancient Egypt is just one chapter in the vast book of human history. What other civilizations should we explore next? The mighty empires of Rome or Persia? The enigmatic Indus Valley civilization? Or maybe the fierce warriors of the Viking Age? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one, and your ideas might inspire our next deep dive into the past. History is a shared story, and we want to hear what parts of it fascinate you most. If this exploration of the pharaohs resonated with you, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more people discover these incredible tales. And if you're hungry for more content like this, subscribing ensures you won't miss a single episode. Whether it's uncovering the secrets of lost worlds, diving into legendary battles, or exploring the everyday lives of ancient peoples, we're here to bring history alive in ways that are engaging, thought-provoking, and unforgettable. So go ahead, click subscribe. It's free, and it means the world to us. Now, as we close this chapter on the pharaohs, I want to leave you with an image. Picture the sun setting over the golden sands of Egypt, casting long shadows across the pyramids. These monuments have stood for thousands of years, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of empires, the ebb and flow of civilizations. They carry within them not just the stones laid by countless workers, but the hopes, fears, and dreams of those who built them. Each block tells a story, not just of divine kingship, but of human resilience, ingenuity, and aspiration. The pharaohs may have sought immortality, but perhaps their greatest achievement was something far simpler. Through their triumphs and failures, their opulence and vulnerabilities, they gave us a mirror to see ourselves more clearly. They remind us of who we are and who we strive to be. As the last rays of sunlight fade behind the horizon, let's carry their stories forward, passing them down through generations. Because in doing so, we honor not only the pharaohs but also the enduring spirit of humanity itself. Thank you for joining me on this adventure through time. Till next time, keep exploring, questioning, and marveling at the wonders of our shared human story. After all, history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding where we came from so we can shape where we're going. As the sun sets over the pyramids, let's carry the stories of these god kings forward, for they remind us of who we are and who we strive to be.